if you'd like to continue with your direct examination, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Morning.
We had just finished with some text on July 15th of 2019 and ending with a chat that had occurred with Lori Vallow and from Charles Vallow's son. Do you recall?
Yes.
Okay. Let us turn to some more conversations or information you included in your summary from July 15th of 2019. So if you could look at the next slide, I think it's noted as slide 16, and take a look at this. Now, this is the same exhibit that you prepared in summary for court today?
Yes.
Okay. And just so the record's clear, this summary is a summary of what?
It's a summary of content from two iCloud accounts, Lori for Style at iCloud.com and lollytime at iCloud.com.
That was part of the evidence submitted obtained by the investigators containing the defendant's communications with people.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you could take a look at the next slide, and we'll go through just these two on the 15th. Can you tell us why you included these two messages?
Yes, I included these messages because they were a reference to the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, and there was a statement from Lori Vallow about the status of that relationship.
Okay. If you could just read into the record, please, so that it's clear what are the text communications between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow that you included from July 15th.
Line 2827 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I know you won't get this text for another hour or so, but my love for you is overflowing right now. I just want to hold you endlessly. You are my wonderful best friend that I can't live without. Line 2826 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. And yet you are so sad. Missing you. Just landed. Gotta get to work.
And so why did these two particular texts, amongst the thousands that you saw, catch your attention and include in the summary?
It discusses Chad Daybell's statement that he can't live without Lori Vallow, and she responds, and yet you are.
Why was that relevant for investigative purposes?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for a legal conclusion.
My question was cut off, Your Honor. I said, why was that relevant for investigators' purposes?
And I'm objecting as it calls for a legal conclusion.
It's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. You may answer.
It was clear to investigators that the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow was a driving force behind the crimes that have been alleged in this case.
Turning to some conversations on July 18th, and I believe these go on for a few bits, but could you take a look at them? Why did you include these particular communications?
This slide and two or three slides after this slide contain a text string between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow regarding the fact that Charles Vallow had changed the beneficiary of his life insurance from Lori Vallow to another individual. I included this because it was pertinent in terms of potential financial motives in this case.
If you could, starting with the lines on page 17, could you take a look at those and read those into the record?
Yes. Line 2706 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I just got the letter from the insurance company saying that I am not the beneficiary. It is a spear through my heart. Who do you think he changed it to? Brandon, or probably Kay. He left nothing for JJ. Line 2705 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Wow, that's terrible. There's no way to find out. Line 2704 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I might be able to see when I get his computer on Sunday. I could check the emails sent to the insurance company. It will show change of beneficiary. He must have done it recently.
If you could, continue on to slide 18, read those as well.
Line 2703 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It seems you would have had to agree to the change. Maybe your name was forged. You should have a good paper trail to prove it. Line 2702 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I love you. This is terrible, but it is probably another step in bringing down the Gadiantons, especially Brandon. Line 2701 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Nope, he can change it anytime he wants. He's the agent, and anyone can change their beneficiary anytime with their own signature. I'm thinking it must be K. Line 2700. From Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It will be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest.
And continuing on this line of summary.
Line 2699 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I don't think it could have. You can't change it after the death date. They would review that. Line 2698 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, I'm thinking Kay as well. She is probably freaking out that you got those computers. I'm going to shower and give you a blessing. I'm eager to get home so we can talk. It really will be okay, my love. You are wonderful. Line 2687 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I'll still get the $4,000 a month from SS. Line 2683 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. When you get out of the temple, please text this phone. I'm home alone until about 3:30 your time. I love you so much.
Now, you indicated that you included this in your summary of the text because it discussed potential financial motive for various crimes.
Correct.
Okay. Let's go back and look at the sort of beginning of this text communication. And why did you talk about getting the letter or include getting the letter from the insurance company saying that Lori was not the beneficiary? Why did you include that text?
I included that because it was apparent that Lori Vallow was surprised to find out that the beneficiary had been changed.
Okay. And was there, turning to the next slide, was there anything significant to you about it is probably another step in bringing down the Gladiatans, especially Brandon? In your review of all the iCloud records in context of the entire investigation that you were part of, did you understand what that meant?
Yes.
What did that mean?
Gadiantons is another reference to the Book of Mormon. The Gadiantons were a secret society, a group of robbers, evil people. So when the phrase Gadianton is used, it's simply identifying someone as being evil in this case, or also in this case, Brandon Boudreaux.
Okay. And why would the inclusion of Brandon Boudreaux in a conversation about Charles Vallow's life insurance money have any significance to you in the investigation?
I'm going to object because it misstates the evidence that's actually been presented. There's no reference to Brandon Boudreaux.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Why would the reference to Brandon in the text at line 2702 have any significance to you as it's inserted in a text conversation about Charles Vallow's life insurance?
That particular line in and of itself isn't terribly significant, other than we know from the investigation that that marriage was also in a tumultuous time, but it was a text in a series of text strings, one following the other, so I included it in amongst this series.
And what, if any, significance was there to the conversation about he can change it at any time? I'm thinking it must be Kay. Did you know who Kay was?
Yes.
Who was Kay?
Kay Woodcock, Charles Vallow's sister.
And turning to the line 2687, what, if any, significance in the investigation was there to a conversation about $4,000 a month from SS?
That's an indication that Lori Vallow would still receive that amount of money on a monthly basis from Social Security.
Okay. And as of July 18th, 2019, had Lori Vallow yet started to receive Social Security from JJ or for JJ from Charles's Social Security account?
Not at that date. That took place a little later on.
And yet it's referenced in line 2687.
Correct.
And that text communication about anticipated Social Security funds was on July 18, 2019, from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell.
Yes.
Okay. Turning to additional conversations on July 18, 2019, do you see those?
I do.
Okay. What, if any, significance to the investigation and or investigators' follow-up did this text communication have?
This short series of texts between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell is critically important because it is the first overt communication between them referencing the pending deaths of JJ and Tylee.
Okay. Can you read to us the text communications we're seeing on slides 20?
Yes. Line 2667. I have been instructed, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I have been instructed to focus my efforts on Hillary, so I will. Line 2665 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Okay, find out her percentage for me and JJ's. Line 2660 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. She is at 0.13. I turned up the pain to 10 and placed a spiritual virus in her. He is at 99.99. Raphael visited him and told him to follow Amy into the light. I also assured him that James would love and take care of his mommy, which he will with all of his heart and soul. Line 2658 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. That is sweet. I miss you desperately.
In your review of the evidence and the iCloud in particular, what significance, if any, did the I have been instructed to focus my efforts on Hillary have in context of the investigation?
Hillary is the name of the entity that allegedly possessed or inhibited Tylee Ryan's body.
And so if you saw references to Hillary, based on the context of the iCloud, that was talking about the spirit in Tylee Ryan's body.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in there's a communication where Lori Vallow is asking Chad to find out her percentages for me and JJ. What did that mean in context of your review of the iCloud?
The reference to the word percentage is a reference to death percentage, meaning the timing or pending death of the individual.
And And so there seems to be a response from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow about a number, that percentage and timing of impending death. Is that what we see in line 2660?
Correct. You see two different numbers.
Okay. What are those? If you could explain those to us.
Objection, Your Honor. This is going to call for some him to speculate as to what these numbers are. I don't think there's any real proof, and I don't think there's been any testimony as to what these numbers are.
Sustained.
Your Honor, were you familiar and did you read almost the entire iCloud?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any information that would lead you to understand what those percentages mean?
Yes.
What information was contained in the documents, which were the defendant's own words, right?
Yes.
What information did you learn in the iCloud that would lead you to understand what those numbers meant in context of the defendant's statements and those statements of her co-conspirators?
There are three total conversations or sets of text strings regarding the death percentage for JJ, Tylee, and Tammy Daybell. There's this one, there's another that occurs on July 30th, and then the third one occurs on August 10th. The content of these three text conversations builds upon one another, and in the subsequent text messages, there is again references to being close to.
If you'll just
One moment,
for a
please.
moment. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff.
Thanks.
You can continue.
Thank you, Judge. I'm sorry, you got cut off. You were talking about reviewing multiple conversations about death percentages. And could you explain to us how it is you conclude what that means in context of the defendant's own words and the statements of our co-conspirators?
Well, the closer an individual was to zero in some instances, or in this instance with JJ, 100, the closer they were to their death.
Okay. And what information did Chad Daybell provide to Lori Vallow about a number associated with Tylee?
He indicates that she is at 0.13.
And what number did Chad Daybell provide about JJ's death percentage?
99.99.
Okay. Did you see references throughout the iCloud in the defendant's own words and the statements of her co-conspirators to lead you to understand who Raphael was?
Yes, Raphael is one of the other two names that was used by Chad Daybell.
Names associated with himself?
Yes.
Okay. What was the other name again?
James.
Okay. And is that the reference to the individual later in that same section?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in response to this death percentage for Tylee and the death percentage to JJ, what was the defendant's response?
That is sweet. I miss you desperately.
Turning to text communications reflected later in the iCloud, was there additional communication between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow on July 18th after the conversation about the death percentage for JJ and Tylee?
Yes.
Could you please, are those reflected in slide 21?
Yes.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Line 2656 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are so adorable, beautiful, wonderful, heavenly, luscious, and angelic. So many divine attributes rolled into one dynamic, desirable package. I want you even more desperately than you want me. Line 2622 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Just grab me by the storm and I will follow you to the ends of the universe. Line 2608 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. When might that be? Line 2607 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Wednesday evening, and then repeatedly and gloriously until Friday.
And that communication continues, correct?
The next slide as well, yes.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Line 2605 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. And then what? Line 2604 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Back to crying and saying goodbye. Back to the box. Line 2603 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. This trip to Utah had a lot of finality to it. I was told extreme changes are coming for me and to Utah. I welcome them both.
Now, in the text communication that's displayed to us on slides 21 and 22, why did you include this part of that communication in your summary for presentation in court?
Mainly for two reasons. One, it substantiates the affair that was being had between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, and it references a trip that Chad Daybell was planning to take to visit Lori Vallow the next week. So this text is on July 18th, 2019. Chad Daybell's travel to visit Lori Vallow in Arizona took place July 24th through July 26th, 2019, which is a Wednesday through Friday. So if you look at line 2607, it states Wednesday evening until Friday.
Okay. Are you aware of what some of the phrase "grab me by the storm and I will follow you to the ends of the earth" meant?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay. What did that mean?
The word storm is the name they had given to Chad Daybell's penis.
Okay. And so this was in anticipation of getting together with each other for sexual purposes?
Yes.
Okay. And at this time, Chad Daybell, was he still married to Tammy?
Yes.
How far from Charles Vallow's death was that?
This is 7 days after Charles Vallow's death.
And at the end of the communication, there's some lines about, and then what, back to crying and saying goodbye. Do you see those on slide 22?
I do.
What, if any, significance in terms of your review of the entire iCloud did that part of the conversation have to the investigation?
It's a reference to their relationship and the fact that it is now one-sided due to Lori Vallow being no longer married.
And what about the trip to Utah? What, if any, significance did that have in context of the other interviews and evidence that had been reviewed?
I don't particularly think the trip to Utah has a lot of significance. It's just one of the texts that concluded this string.
Okay. And the statement, I was told extreme changes are coming for me and Utah? Was that from Chad Daybell?
That's a reference from Chad Daybell regarding changes that he is anticipating.
Now, you've included on slides 23 a series of text communications starting in the Lolly Time account at line 2487 from July 20th, 2019. Do you see those?
I do.
Okay. Why did you include these text communications?
These are relevant because they demonstrate some of the religious concepts that were at play in this investigation, particularly as it relates to children being designated as being possessed or inhibited by demons. In this case, they're talking about Melanie Boudreau's children.
Blake, was that one of Melanie Boudreau's children?
That's her son.
If you could please read those into the record, these text SMS messages from Lolly Time into the record.
Yes. Line 2487 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What's Blake's percentage? Line 2486 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. He drew 3 crosses on the wall in his bedroom. We just finished painting over them. Line 2485 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, like he was marking it for the dark side to find him. Line 2482 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Blake is at 7. S-I, I took my sword of light and sliced his aura vertically in several places. You should be able to now rip and burn it. Line 2481 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I also decreased his pain tolerance to 1% and greatly increased his pain. His desire to depart is at 80%.
I understand you've explained you included this to show a conversation about the darkness of children. Did this text communication have any more significance to you?
I think that it is fairly self-explanatory.
Okay. Moving to the next text communication on the next day that you pulled and included on slide 24. Can you tell us why you included this series of text or SMS messages from Lolly Time in your summary?
Yes, this is a short text string that is a follow-up in reference to the life insurance beneficiary change, where Lori Vallow is communicating to Chad Daybell that she now knows who the beneficiary of that life insurance policy is.
Can you read that into this text exchange on slide 24 into the record, please?
Yes. Line 2438 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Found it. Ned gave all of it to Rhonda, 2/26/19. Line 2432 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Glad you found that out. Line 2430 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It fits. Now she will try to take him. THX for working on her. Work on me too. Reading all this stuff makes me sick. Line 2423 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. We will work hard on Rhonda when we are together. I will get her numbers as low as I can by Wednesday. Line 2419 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Good, let's work on it hard.
Now, you indicated it was information about the life insurance account, but in your review of multiple communications of Lori Vallow and multiple communications of Charles Vallow, was there a common association with the name Rhonda?
Yes.
What was that?
Rhonda is the name of the entity or dark spirit that supposedly inhibited Kay Woodcock.
Okay. And so reference in here about Ned, that we've heard that before, that was?
Ned, the reference to Ned is Charles Vallow.
Okay. And the reference to Rhonda was?
Kay Woodcock.
Okay. And so it's an indication that Charles Vallow gave the insurance money to Kay Woodcock.
Exactly.
And the date that Ms. Lori Vallow found out it happened.
No. The date is indicative of the date that Charles Vallow changed the beneficiary of his policy.
Okay. Now, is there anything else of significance you wanted to review as to slide 24?
No.
Okay. Turning to the next conversation, I see a reference to James and Elena again. And I recognize you talked about this a bit on Friday, but since there's been a bit of a break, who are James and Elena again?
James and Elena are alternative names, James being Chad Daybell and Elena being Lori Vallow. The James and Elena story, which is contained in its entirety in the iCloud accounts, is partly historical, accurate information chronicling the events in the lives of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, and it's partly fantasy.
Okay. So when you say the James and Elena story, is it just, one or two emails? Was it easy to put that story together?
Well, it wasn't difficult to put it together, but it's several segments written over time by Chad Daybell and then sent to Lori Vallow.
Okay. And so when you say several segments, there would be a text message one day, an email another, an MMS another, spread across iCloud accounts.
I believe it was limited to just texts and emails, but yes, it was spread out over time.
Okay. And understanding that you were one of the supervisory investigators on this, did you task members of the FBI to help comb through the iCloud and find the parts of the James and Elena story?
Yes, I saw all of the James and Elena story in my review of the iCloud accounts, but in order to corroborate portions of that story, I assigned an analyst to accumulate the entire story and then go through to find corroborative data or evidence to indicate the accuracy of the story.
So in order for someone to see the entirety of the James and Elena story, they either have to be able to hop around the iCloud.
Correct.
Or they have to have somebody kind of take it from here and take it from this date and sort of put it together.
Yes.
Now, and forgive me, I just want to make sure I understand. I know a long time ago in the public, stories would appear kind of in periodicals. There'd be a segment in the paper one week, right? And then a segment in the paper the next, and over time you heard the whole story.
I want to object. This seems to be a narrative from the
I'm just laying a foundation, Judge.
I'm not done objecting here. And it doesn't seem like there's a question, Judge.
And I'll sustain that. It's an improper question at this point, Ms. Smith.
Understood, Your Honor. May I approach the bench, not on that issue, but I want clarification on some procedures the court outlined on Friday? Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Smith, you can ask another question.
Thank you. Agent, have you seen situations where stories are pieced out in a periodical over time?
Yes.
Okay. Is that similar to how the James and Elena story evolved?
Yes, over a fairly abbreviated period of time.
Okay. So there's no one text that any one person could go to that would give them the James and Elena story?
Correct.
Okay. And so in order to compile that would have to be like a summary of the James and Elena story?
Yes.
Okay. Now, turning to this text, could you please read the contents of slide 25 into the record?
Yes, line 2397, text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. James and Elena had agreed to visit the temple the following morning. She returned to the hotel room, and after additional romance on the couch, they calmed their nerves enough to give each other a blessing. As James placed his hands on her head, he connected with Elena's true, eternal self. He knew he was in the presence of an exalted goddess who had returned to earth to perform a special mission. This mission included being with him, and they would progress together as translated beings. The full plan wasn't yet completely clear to him, but the immense power radiating from her confirmed his belief that she was among the greatest women in the universe.
Okay. And the communication it goes on to the next slide, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please read slide 26 into the record?
Line 2395, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. They embraced following the blessings, and the emotions they felt were a mixture of eternal bliss and celestial desire. The sexual chemistry was undeniable, but the spiritual unity was a glorious bonus for both of them. They had only known each other for 3 weeks, but two lonely, misunderstood souls had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in. Line 2394, from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. She loves it.
And it appears there's one more portion of that.
Correct.
Can you read us slide 27, please?
Line 2390, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. They arrived at the temple, and they both felt they should do sealings together. They were soon seated in a sealing room facing each other. Elena looked so stunning as she smiled at him. She seemed calm, while he felt quite nervous. Their opportunity soon came to kneel across the altar from each other, and as the sealer pronounced those sacred words, James and Elena knew that they were now sealed as husband and wife for eternity. As the earthly sealing was taking place, a similar scene involving their spirits was happening on a higher plane, where they kissed and unified their souls. They knew they had just begun a new journey together that was eternal and never-ending.
We'll go back to each portion of that, but is this the entire James and Elena story?
No.
Okay. It's just a couple sections that occurred on July 21st of 2019.
Correct.
Because your summary of the iCloud was chronological?
Yes.
All right. So let's step back and look at slide 25. Why did you choose to include this part of the James and Elena story in your summary?
I included this slide because of the reference to the full plan not being completely clear to him.
Why would that be relevant to the investigators in the investigation?
The fact that a plan existed is relevant to the investigation and to the subsequent actions that took place over the course of time.
Anything else that, other than that there's discussion of what the plan was, and did you believe that to be a reference to a plan for what?
A plan on how they would progress together.
Was there anything else significant about this particular text?
The only other thing I would add is that this mission included being with him.
Okay. And in terms of the portion of the James and Elena story that is reflected in line 2395, why did you include this portion?
This I included for the reference that two lonely, misunderstood souls had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in, as a reference to their blossoming relationship.
Okay. Now, when you say a reference to their blossoming relationship, I thought they had met in November of 2018.
No, they met in October 26th through the 28th of 2018 at a conference in St. George, Utah. The second time that they met in person was in mid-November at a conference in Arizona.
Okay. And so if they had met in October and then again in November of 2018, why do you say blossoming relationship that's as reflected in a text from July of 2019?
Because the James and Elena story is the history of their relationship. So he is talking about their second meeting where they had decided to attend a temple and do a sealing ceremony.
Okay. And did you see a response from Lori Vallow in response to receiving the James and Elena story?
That she loved it.
Okay. And at this point, how long has Charles Vallow been dead?
10 days.
Was Tammy Daybell still alive?
Correct.
Moving to the next part of that James and Elena conversation, you referenced the temple, and the text appears to reference the temple. Did the investigators follow up to obtain temple records?
Yes.
And were those temple records analyzed?
Yes.
What information of relevance to the investigation was obtained in the temple records?
Those records show that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow attended the Gilbert, Arizona temple together on November 16th of 2019.
Would that have been
2018, I'm sorry.
2018, okay. And would that have been that second meeting you referenced?
Yes.
Okay.
Objection, this is speculative, Judge. Move to strike.
Overruled.
Is there anything else of relevance to this segment of this one text that's a part of the James and Elena story?
Yes, according to the story that in attending the temple on that date, James and Elena knew they were now sealed together as husband and wife, showing that they believed they were married.
And the temple records that you reflected that both Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow had been at the temple in Gilbert, Arizona in November of 2018.
November 16th.
Okay. At or near the same time?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you see, as reflected in slide 28, did you see any additional response of Lori Vallow about receiving this chronicle story of James and Elena?
Yes.
Is that what's reflected, or part of it reflected in slide 28?
Correct.
Okay. Can you please read that into the record?
Line 2388 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It's making me so happy to read about our life that I am finally going to dance, missing you and loving you from afar. Line 2374 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It was great. I feel free again. I love you more than ever and can't wait to be with you forever. I'm begging Father and Mother. That's my job tonight. Line 2373 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will be right beside you, begging just as much. I need you desperately.
Why did you include this part of the communication from the iCloud in your summary?
I believe it was relevant to show Lori Vallow's response to the segments of the James and Elena story.
Now, turning to communications on July 22nd of 2019, why did you include this series of communications from Lolly Time in your summary?
I included these communications because it contains a clear reference to the plans that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow had to be together and disclosed a location where they intended to live as part of their plan.
Could you read to us in the record the contents of the text included on slide 29, and I believe it also goes into 30.
Line 2352 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Love you. Going with Garth in an hour to see Other Side of Heaven 2. Missing you desperately, but so excited to be with you. Line 2349 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you. You will enjoy the scenery. Looks like Kauai a lot. Line 2346 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Hopefully we will be there someday soon together. Line 2345 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. That is the plan. Line 2344 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. And my greatest desire. Line 2334 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Hi, darling. Back from the movie. We enjoyed it. I look forward to being on a tropical island with you.
So what significance did the reference to Kauai have to you in your review of the iCloud in context of the evidence that had been accumulated?
In the totality of the case, for the entire time span of the case, it's relevant because Kauai is the island where Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow traveled to be married, and that is the island where they were found after the children were known to be missing, and ultimately that's where Lori Vallow was arrested on some charges.
Okay. And so, but they were in Kauai when?
They were married in Kauai on November 5th of 2019, and after being contacted by the Rexburg Police Department for a welfare check on JJ, they traveled the very next day to Kauai.
And so, but this text communication referencing a future together in Kauai was in July of 2019.
Correct.
Again, Tammy Daybell was still alive.
Yes.
Was there anything else of significance on this particular slide?
No.
Moving to slide 30, what, if any, significance did this text communication have to you?
This series of texts is significant in that it is a positive affirmation that of their belief that Tylee is possessed by some sort of entity, and Lori Vallow is asking Chad Daybell to check on Tylee to see if that entity has been switched from her body.
In line 2276, was there also a reference to JJ?
Yes.
Okay. And that was in a text communication initiated by Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, correct?
Yes.
And then line 2244 is a text communication from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell wanting Chad to check on Tylee.
Correct.
Okay. And then 2243, again, was a text from Lori Vallow initiating to see if Tylee was switched.
Yes.
Okay. And so when switched, just so that we're clear, in context of the defendant's communications, how did the defendant's communications use the word switched?
That was used to indicate one evil entity leaving the body to potentially be possessed by another.
Okay. And this is a text communication initiated by Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else of significance in this text line?
Do I need to read it in the record?
Thank you. I apologize. I missed that one. Yes, please.
Line 2276 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Good morning. Missing you. Didn't sleep much. Need you to check JJ. Weird stuff happened in the middle of the night. It's like they distracted us with Blake. Line 2244 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. When you get home, check Tylee. She is being super sweet and helpful, and she cleaned her room. She got switched. Totally not her. Line 2243 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. See if she got switched. Line 2241 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, she was switched. Please let me know when you can talk, and I will explain it.
Now, turning to a conversation on July 26, 2019, do you see that reflected in slide 31?
Yes.
Okay. And that proceeds into slide 32, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you include this series of text communications in your summary?
This is, again, an occasion where Lori Vallow is asking Chad Daybell to check on her children based on their behaviors.
Could you read slide 31 into the record, please?
Line 2120, text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. How are things at home? Line 2119 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. She's fine. Need you to check JJ. She said he was calm and he watched movies all day, which he would never do. Line 2118 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, missing you.
Proceeding on to the text communication on slide 32, could you read those into the record?
Line 2117 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow, missing you too. It is still JJ. I'm told she is lying about him being calm and watching movies. Line 2101, text from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Mel knew. She called me. She felt the real Brighton last night and knew she was different. She was told I didn't want to tell her. She is taking well and knowing it is part of a big plan. She is amazing, although I'm still pretty upset over it. I love you, trying to hang in there, missing your kisses.
Now, between slide 31 and 32, why did you include these particular text communications in addition to checking on JJ and Tylee? Why did you include these two slides?
I included them because of the references to JJ and then the other reference to Brighton, who is another of Melanie Boudreau's children. Based on the content of that text, appears that Brighton has now been designated as being possessed by an entity.
Okay. And you say Melanie Boudreau's children. Was that child's father Brandon Boudreau?
Correct.
Okay. Now, it also says there's the word big plan. In context of the defendant's communications, what did big plan refer to?
It referred to those things that would take place in the future that were being planned by Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Okay. Now, did you review the iCloud for, discussion of a plan or future together?
Yes, there are several references which I have included in the summary presentation to plans and the future.
Okay. And that use of the word plan was used by Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell?
Correct.
Okay. Any idea how many times?
No.
Okay. Turning to communications, also on July 26, 2019, reflected in slide 33, why did you include these particular communications?
July 26, 2019 was the day that Chad Daybell flew home after having spent a few days with Lori Vallow in Arizona. And this is the message that he sent to, these are the messages that he sent to Lori Vallow upon his return to his home in Rexburg, Idaho.
Could you please read those into the record?
Sure. Line 2066 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm home, missing you immensely and feeling very tired, but I had a splendid time with you, my love. I will text again soon. Line 2059 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Tonight I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover, but then I have to return to my place under the stairs, feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming.
As of July 26, 2019, Chad Daybell was still married to Tammy Daybell.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else of significance as to slide 33?
No.
Okay. Turning to communications that you included from July 27th from the Lally Time account on slides 34 and on slide 34. Why did you include this text communication?
I included this because of, again, a reference to the timing of the events that took place in this case.
And when you say a reference to events that took place, what particular events took place that these would reference?
The events I'm referring to are the crimes that are alleged in this case.
And so could you read slide 34 into the record, please?
Line 2043, from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. From Mel B. From Father. My sweet daughter, you have done well. I am very pleased. You have been prepared for every moment and surrounded by those who love you. You need not fear the future happenings, for they are strategically placed out for your benefit. Be at peace and be still. Enjoy the little things. Have no fear of the unknown or of people's choices. You have overcome all. Things will be fast-paced and you are ready. I love you so much. Godspeed. Now, don't mind if I speed things up a bit. Line 2042 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. That is a very nice message Mel B received. I won't mind at all if he speeds things up a bit. Line 2038 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, I miss holding you in my arms, caressing and kissing you. I feel Mel's message was meant for us too. You are so wonderful.
Can you explain to us why you chose to include these texts in your summary?
There's a reference to a timing, a timeline, and speeding those things up.
Okay. And who was the reference to from Father?
That is a reference.
I'm going to object. Is this a speculative, Judge?
Sustained.
In your review of the iCloud account and the defendant's, Lori Vallow's communications with Chad Daybell and others, were there references referring to one or more of the co-conspirators as dad or father?
Yes.
And in the references between Lori Vallow and her co-conspirators, who did dad or father mean?
Chad Daybell.
Okay. Is that a reference to father from Melanie Boudreau in line 2043?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, it misstates the testimony. It misstates what's actually being read here.
I'll overrule the objection at this point. There was a foundation laid for the comment, and you can delve into that on cross if you'd like, Mr. Thomas.
Very good.
Anything else that of significance on this that you want to make sure we review?
No.
Turning to the next slide, 35. I see you included a series of communications. Why did you include this section?
These texts are indicative of the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Could you please read the text that you included in to the record?
Line 1935 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Are you mad, sad, what? Line 1934 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm doing okay, just no privacy here to hardly text, and I'm missing you immensely. I feel good about the trip. Line 1933 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I need a distraction while I'm waiting for you. I love you. Line 1932 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Absolutely. I think you'll have a fun time.
And so you indicated that text communication seemed to be indicative in context of your review of the entire iCloud of the relationship between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. How so?
At this point, we are a few weeks after Charles Vallow's death, and Lori indicates to Chad that she is waiting for him and is going to be taking a trip as a distraction while she's waiting.
And from the review of the evidence, did you see whether or not Lori took a trip?
Yes.
Where did she go?
The coast, California.
Ms. Smith, and I hate to interrupt, but before you publish the next slide, could I confirm that was the slide that had some potentially personal identifier information that needed to be redacted or have that removed? Would you confirm that before it's published, please?
Yes, Your Honor, it did. I can simply ask. It did not get redacted. However, it's pretty small. Can I redact it after, or do you want me to skip it and come back to it after a break?
Just make sure it's not published, please.
Okay.
Until it's been redacted.
Okay. Agent, if you could, on the next slide there appears, and I'm going to do a little leading here just to avoid publishing, if I may.
That's fine.
Okay. On the next slide, there appears to be some documents that were found in the SMS, which included documents of life insurance policy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell us what those documents are?
Those are two photographs, MMS messages that Lori Vallow sent to Chad Daybell, and they are the screenshots of life insurance policy showing the change of beneficiary from Lori Vallow to Kay Woodcock.
And the date on the images sent would reflect that they were in the iCloud or sent in the iCloud on July 28th of 2019. I'm reading from the slide. Image sent from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, July 28th, 2019, 9:40 p.m., line 89. Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's a second image sent a minute later on July 28th, line 88, reflecting another page and a beneficiary of Kay Woodcock.
Yes.
All right. Why did you include those images in your summary?
Chronologically, the life insurance issue had been discussed between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow on two prior occasions, and this sort of concludes that as the photos that she sent to Chad Daybell to show that beneficiary change.
Okay. And so Lori is discussing the beneficiary on her now dead husband's life insurance with Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Okay. And then sending in proof of the change of beneficiary.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I will skip past that and then we'll redact it and we can request permission to publish it at a later date.
All right.
Thank you. Now, turning to a text communication on July 29th, 2019, do you see that on slide 37?
I do.
Okay. Why did you include this text communication in your summary?
I included it because of its references to causing pain to children.
Okay. Can you please read those, the text communications into the records?
Line 1877 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. One question. Do you want me to cause pain yet to those 2 3s you're writing with? Line 1876 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Probably hold off on then till we arrive. They will be mistake to deal with, but I'll text you if they start acting up and we can zap them. Line 1875 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Miserable, not mistake. Line 1872 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Sounds great. Yes, if they are going to act up, we'll at least give them a reason to scream. I love, cherish, treasure, and adore you. The wonderful memories just keep coming back. You are mesmerizing. Raphael is one lucky guy.
Now, on July 29th, was this the time I think you had mentioned Lori Vallow was getting ready to take a trip?
Yes.
Okay. Who was she on that trip with?
Melanie Boudreau and her children.
Okay. Were Lori Vallow's children with her?
I am not sure if Tylee was present. JJ was with her.
Okay. And so when there's a reference to the 2 3s you're writing with, in context of the defendant's communications and her statements to Melanie Boudreau and her co-conspirator Chad Daybell, who did you believe those 2 3s were?
Objection is calling for speculation.
Sustained.
Did you review Lori Vallow's communications with Chad Daybell and Melanie Boudreau about this trip to California?
Yes.
Okay. And in that communication, did you have a chance to learn who was riding in cars with her?
They took one car with Melanie Boudreau's children And JJ, again, I'm not sure if Tylee was present.
Okay. And we've seen previous text communications referencing Blake or Brighton or JJ as being possessed, correct?
We haven't seen communications yet regarding JJ being possessed, but yes, to Brighton and Blake.
Okay. And so did you have an opinion on who the threes were that were in the car in light of the communications?
Brighton and Blake.
Okay. Why did you include this particular text string in the communications between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow?
The references to hurting children and giving them a reason to scream are relevant.
Okay. In any of these references, and I think you've mentioned a couple of times that concept, did you ever see Lori Vallow protest, like, don't do that?
No.
Turning to additional communication on July 29th, 2019, why did you include this series of communications outlined on slide 38?
This is the final communication regarding this life insurance issue with Charles Vallow.
Could you please read slide 38 into the record, please?
Yes. Line 1844 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. From Kay in response to what I sent Larry. Are you angry at me? Charles did this. I told him I didn't want to be party to it. BC. Somehow I'd be made out to be the bad guy. Low. All I can say is he must have had a reason to do this regardless of what I said. INS company called me to notify that I'm beneficiary. Wanting JJ for memorial has nothing to do with money. We want him here even though he won't know what's going on because it's a memorial service for his dad. We feel when someone passes that their children attend services to meet/visit with people that loved them in life. And BC, we miss him, period. You have the only say in this matter. If for no other reason, you and I should be able to get along with each other. It doesn't need to be hostile. We miss him so much. I'll leave in the morning to get him if you'd allow it. I'm begging you, please. Line 1839 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Interesting message from Kay. She doesn't seem inclined to share the money. Hopefully Larry wants to talk to you. Line 1838 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. They are jerks. I was going to say, I hope you are going to give all the money to the kids and not keep it for yourself. But it's fruitless. I'm not responding ever.
And so you included this as sort of the end of the discussion on the life insurance of Charles Vallow.
That's right.
Okay. After this, did you ever find any evidence that Lori Vallow responded to any messaging, text, emails, MMS to Kay Vallow? Kay Woodcock.
I did not.
Okay. Did you include this for any other reason?
No.
Your Honor, I certainly can keep going. We have a substantial amount more, but I'm transitioning to a new area. Do you want to take morning break now or just keep going?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take our morning recess.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
So we'll be in recess till maybe 10:35.
All right, please.
All right, thank you. I think we'll have the jurors brought in here pretty quickly, so we can just remain standing for the jury, please.
All right, please. Jury's all present. Count for Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Vallow. Please be seated. All right, we're back on the record on CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori-Vallow. After the morning break, the jurors are all present and properly seated. Ms. Smith, you can continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. Now, Agent, I'm turning to the next slide, which is slide 39, and a conversation that appears to have occurred, or at least been a part of it, on July 30th, 2019. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you include this conversation, and I suspect it goes into the next slide, on slide 40 in your summary?
This slide, and there's two subsequent slides that contain this text string, is critically important in that it clarifies death percentages and contains valuable information as it relates to JJ and Tammy Daybell and their stated death percentage.
Okay. Could you read us slide 39 and include it into the record?
Yes. Line 1781 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I got the inspiration to go back to my original death percentages that helped us track Charles, Ned, etc. Tammy is very close. Her percentage has fallen steadily since Hiplos left. It is encouraging. Line 1779 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What is the percentage now? What about JJ's too? Line 1778 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Tammy is at 3. JJ is at 2. Both are being heavily shielded to stop intruders.
And I move to the next slide.
Line 1777 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. 2 and 3%, not 0. Line 1776 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will explain when we talk. Line 1775 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Okay, still feeling hot for you.
And the next one?
Line 1774 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, we might need to release a little steam when we talk. Anyway, this is the chart that checks what percentage mortals are still in their body. It worked for my friend's wife who died, my neighbor, George Bush, Stan Lee, etc. I kind of forgot about it because we've been dealing with zombies and demonic entities. But this afternoon, Tammy said she felt lightheaded, as if her body and spirit weren't connected. Line 1773, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will update the list and figure out Brandon, Adam, and others.
Do you want me to include the next series of communications or stop with these three?
I believe this slide is the conclusion of this particular text string.
Okay. And so turning back to the information, can you remind us again who is Hiplos or Iplos?
Hiplos is the name of a demonic entity or dark spirit that was alleged to have been inhabiting Tammy Daybell's body.
In your review of the iCloud, what significance did the reference of Hiplos have in this text communication?
It is one of multiple names that were assigned to entities that at any given time inhibited Tammy Daybell's body.
And what about the reference to Charles or Ned?
Those are significant in that it clarifies when the word death percentage is being used, they're talking about the literal physical death of a human being.
And who is the one who initiated the inquiry about the death percentage associated with JJ?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. And the information about both are being heavily shielded to stop intruders, what did that mean in context of the communication you observed between Lori Vallow and her co-conspirator, Chad Daybell?
I'm not entirely certain the thought process on how they're being heavily shielded.
Okay. Did you learn anything about sort of the thought process on how close either Tammy or JJ were to death?
Well, it says Tammy is very close. She's at 3%, and then JJ is at 2%. So 2 and 3%, based on the content of the text, is very close to death.
And what was the defendant's response when she heard they were still at 2 or 3%?
She questioned why they weren't yet at 0.
Okay. What significance did these text communications have in terms of your review of the investigation itself?
Given the ultimate deaths of JJ, Tylee, and Tammy Daybell, it was significant in that it speaks about those deaths and that they are close to taking place.
Okay. And the person who initiates the desire for it to get to 0 is who?
Lori
Objection
Vallow.
calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Could you read for us line 1777?
From Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, 2 and 3%, not 0.
Okay. That was initiated by the defendant to Chad Daybell?
Correct.
And in terms of lines, the slides on slide 41, line 1774 and 1773, why did you include these as part of that conversation?
Well, to have the conversation captured in its totality, but also line 1774 is another verification that they are indeed talking about real, literal deaths when he references for my friend's wife who died.
And so when you say real literal deaths, as opposed to what?
As opposed to spiritual death or theoretical death or speaking about death in any terms other than a human being actually dying.
And then, is there anything else that you, any other reason why you included this particular slide in this summary?
Just that in the previous slide, Chad Daybell stated Tammy is very close, and he concluded with Tammy said she felt lightheaded as if her body and spirit weren't connected.
And what information was relevant about that in terms of the investigation?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as answered.
Overruled.
Simply that when someone's body and spirit separate, they die.
So turning to slide 42, do you see those communications also from July 30th, 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you include this particular set of communications in your summary?
Mainly for the last line, which references the fabulous life that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow are going to have together.
Could you read the contents of slide 42 into the record, please?
Yes, line 1750 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I believe lily-licious is a terrestrial word that encompasses our time together. Line 1749 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Yes, it does. Call me. Line 1748 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you until then. Line 1747 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, until then, I love you. Line 1745 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. No worries. Garth just arrived home. I absolutely adore you. We're going to have a fabulous life together.
And so is this another example that you included of them planning for the future and planning their life together?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I see a reference to the word terrestrial, and I also remember from one of the previous slides there was telestral. In context of your review of Lori Vallow's communications in her iCloud accounts, how were those two words used?
In context of the review, the word telestial is a reference to this world, worldly, the time, the place that we live in presently, and terrestrial is a reference to a higher plane of some sort.
Okay. And so when they say lily-licious is a terrestrial word that encompasses our time together, in this context and in context of your review, what did it mean?
Objection is going to call for speculation.
I don't see enough foundation for him to answer to this point, Ms. Smith.
Were the words telestial and terrestrial used frequently within the iCloud, or on occasion within the iCloud?
Telestial was used quite a bit. Terrestrial was not used nearly as much.
Okay. How was telestial used?
In reference to this world.
Okay. And I believe you've told us terrestrial was used in what context, as used by the defendant in her own communications with her co-conspirator?
With reference to a higher plane, a more elevated place.
Okay. And so lily-licious would be reference to a higher place word encompassing their relationship.
Yes.
Okay. Now turning to text communications that are reflected on slide 43, why did you include these communications?
There were some communications in the iCloud that provided insight into Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow's behaviors that were relevant.
And relevant to the investigation and to investigative follow-up?
Relevant just in establishing a pattern of life or how they behaved.
Okay. Could you read to us the contents of slide 43 into the record, please?
Yes, line 1117 from Lori Vallow to an unlisted individual. Panda was good, just got JJ to sleep. Gone to try to take a bath. Ty yelled at me for 30 minutes, then took off in her car. Won't answer me. Line 1116 from unlisted individual to Lori Vallow. That was expected.
In context of the investigation and the iCloud and the communications of the defendant, you said it indicated sort of a pattern of conduct. What did you mean by that?
There were voluminous communications between Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow regarding difficulties that they were having with Tylee as a teenage girl, and this is just one of those communications. Okay. Not between Charles Vallow. This takes place after his death, but it's one communication that describes that type of interaction.
Okay. And so in your summary, you tried to include examples of patterns you found throughout the iCloud.
Just a few.
Okay. Now, turning to slide 44, what are we seeing here?
These are two MMS messages. Each is a photograph. One photograph is of Chad Daybell standing next to a portrait of Jesus Christ. The other is a photograph of Alex Cox standing next to the same portrait. And then each of them sent a MMS message to Lori Vallow attached to those photographs.
Could you read to us into the record the MMS text sent to Lori Vallow from Alex Cox?
Line 75 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow, look at the bubbies.
Okay. And this was a photograph of Chad Daybell?
Correct.
Okay. And it was Chad next to a picture of Jesus?
Yes.
And could you read into the record line 76 of the MMS text message from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow?
Line 76, photograph of Alex Cox, two exalted beings.
And why did you include these in your summary for the jury?
For two reasons. One, to show Chad Daybell and Alex Cox together on August 7th of 2019. And in terms of the religious concepts that were at play in this investigation, the reference to Alex Cox being an exalted being.
And that reference to Alex Cox being an exalted being was sent by Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow?
Correct.
Is there any other reason why you included this particular section?
No.
Turning to additional communication on August 7, 2019, slide 45, why did you include this section in your summary?
I included this mainly because of the last text in this string, which indicates that Lori Vallow and Melanie Boudreau believe their children to be demons.
Okay. Can you read into the record the text communication on page 45?
Yes, line 1399 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you. Taking Braxy home now. I'll check on her. Line 1394 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. She is asleep. She put a bunch of holes in the walls and doors. Definitely had demons helping her, probably 1,000. Line 1392 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Mel wants us to come up there tomorrow, but I said next Thursday to Sunday. What do you think? Line 1391 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. We are both so tired of taking care of demons. We are weary. Please ask the Lord to take them.
In context of your review of the iCloud and the evidence in this case, what significance did that have from an investigative point of view?
The significance is the designation of these children as being demons, being possessed by some dark entity, and in light of what happened with JJ and Tylee, it is relevant to the investigation in its totality.
And looking at line 1391, who is it asking that the Lord take them?
It's a reference to their children.
Okay. And who is making the request that please ask the Lord to take them?
Lori Vallow.
Now, turning to the next lines of communications as reflected on slide 46, why did you include this set of communications in the summary?
This is the first of a number of pages of a text string that chronicles a fight between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell in reference to a trip that Lori Vallow was taking to visit Chad Daybell in Rexburg, Idaho.
Okay. Was that trip able to occur?
Yes.
Okay. And so you included this to sort of document the conversation surrounding that trip?
Yes, and the issues that arose with that trip.
Okay. Now, let's read those into the record, and then we'll talk about those issues.
Line 1369, text from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. We just had a big fight, probably no go on next week. Line 1368 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. Are you okay? Line 1367 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. My heart is crushed, but I will never stop loving you. Line 1364 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. I love you. If you need to talk at all, just call me. I don't sleep anyways. Hang in there, babe. It was a hard day. Don't let the dumb things here get to you. You know who you are. Praying for our hearts to be made full and for the Lord to execute all things expeditiously.
Before we read the remainder of that sort of text exchange or surrounding that trip, why did you include these particular texts in your summary?
They affirm the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. This is the first instance of a fight between the two that I was able to observe in the iCloud. And the subsequent texts indicate the fullness of that particular conversation as it relates to this fight.
And what about the phrase, for the Lord to execute all things expeditiously? What did that phrase, how was that phrase important to this text communication in context to the iCloud as you saw it?
And I'll object as to speculative. It's calling for him to speculate.
I'll overrule that.
Melanie Boudreau and Lori Vallow were very close. Melanie was aware from prior text communications of the Lord's plan for them, and that is a reference to executing that plan.
Now, continuing with that conversation, can you, or that situation as reflected in the iCloud, could you read into the record the text from page 47?
Line 1348 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Missing you. Heading to the girl's funeral. Emma was her teacher and is one of the speakers. This is very difficult, but I will abide by your request to not talk. I hate causing you pain because I love you more than ever. Line 1345 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You're the best. I hope your day goes well. I adore you. Line 1303 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Absolutely excruciating to be cut off from you. I love you.
If you could you read to us the next few lines on, continued on to slide 48?
Yes, line 1302 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Good night. Saddest day of my life. Line 1300 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Grandpa Keith is here. I am supposed to warn you that you are unprotected. The angels are angry that you are ignoring me. I told him to go back, but he says he isn't allowed to. I'm honestly not trying to manipulate you to respond. I understand that you need your space, but they say you have cut me off, and the protection I built around your house is gone. I love you and don't want you getting attacked. They said that if you at least give me a thumbs up emoji, it will restore our connection enough to give some protection. Line 1299 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you. Line 1298 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Thank you, my love. I will get things restored.
So why did you include these particular communications that are reflected in slide 47 and 48 in the summary of your review?
I included them to demonstrate first the argument that had taken place regarding Lori Vallow coming to Rexburg to visit Chad Daybell, and secondly, to demonstrate how Chad Daybell used religious concepts to manipulate others.
And throughout those text communications from around 11:30 in the morning on August 8th through around 10:02 on August 8th, I see multiple communications from Chad to Lori. Were there many communications from Lori back to him?
No, as is shown, she was ignoring him up until the text at 9:53 p.m.
Okay. And so is line 13 his response to being ignored?
Line 1300?
Line 1300, yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And what significance did Grandpa Keith have to you, if any, in context of that communication?
It's my understanding that Grandpa Keith is deceased, so it's Chad Daybell claiming that a deceased relative was visiting him to...
I'm going to object, move to strike. He's speculating.
Sustained.
Okay. So the phrase Grandpa Keith is here. Is that that communication was from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow?
Yes.
Okay. And then the rest of that, Chad indicates he's supposed to warn her that she's not protected.
Correct.
And in order to provide the protection, she's got to give him a thumbs up or some sort of sign.
Yes.
And does Lori Vallow do that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else of significance in that particular set of text communications?
No.
Okay. Moving to some communication on August 9th, 2019. Do you see those reflected in slide 49?
I do.
Okay. Can you, what significance did this line of communication have in terms of your summary?
So there's this slide, and this text string continues into the subsequent slide. This is significant in that it is an occasion where we see Chad Daybell designating someone as a dark spirit and Lori Vallow disagreeing with Chad Daybell's designation and making her own designation as to that individual's status.
Okay. And does it show any pushback or disagreement from Chad on her own designation?
He subsequently agrees to her designation.
Okay. Could you please read into the record slide 49 and 50?
Line 1232 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Can you check Nathan Pacheco, see what level he is? Is he light? Line 1231 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Also Mike Stroud. Mel G thinks he went dark, but I think he's light. Line 1229 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will check those two. Line 1226 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Any guesses on Pacheco? Line 1225 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Just tell me. Line 1224 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. 4.1 dark.
And slide 50?
Line 1222 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Nope, I get 5.1 light, part of our team. Line 1221 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. We'll go with your answer. Line 1220 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Why? What's wrong with your picker? Line 1219 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What about Mike Stroud? Seriously. Line 1218 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. He's done a great infiltration job.
And so you indicated that this reflected an exchange on rating people. Why did you include this particular exchange?
Traditionally, Chad Daybell was the one who would designate people as he would give these light or dark scores. This is an occasion where Lori Vallow disagrees with his score and designates her own score.
Okay. And again, it appears that Chad Daybell specifically said, we'll go with your answer.
Correct.
Turning to the next set of communications from August 10th, can you tell us why you included the communications that are reflected on slide 50?
Yes. So this is a fairly lengthy text string that encompasses this slide and the next 5 slides. I included these communications because they are critically important in providing clarity as it relates to what ultimately happened to Tylee and JJ.
Okay. Let's start with, could you read into the record slide 51?
Line 1177, please check JJ. Line 1177 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Please check JJ. He just woke up saying crazy stuff and won't go back to sleep. He is talking to Blake. It's weird. Line 1175 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. JJ is still JJ. I am told his spirit recognizes Blake is evil and is unsettled by him. Line 1172 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Hi, my love. How is JJ now? Line 1171 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. He's better. He was just up talking nonsense for like 2 hours last night. I'm sure they were bugging him. Is he at 0 yet? I miss you.
Do you want to read the next one and circle back, or do you want to take a minute to talk about why you included this set?
Why don't we read the entire text string in its totality and then circle back?
Okay. So turning to slide 52, could you please read slide 52 into the record?
Line 1170 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, he's at 0. He probably was partly through the veil, talking to people both light and dark. Line 1169 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Maybe he was talking to the real Blake. Line 1167 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, that was the real Blake.
And continuing on the conversation in line 53, at slide 53.
Line 1165 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Do you think there is a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children? And we just have to wait for it to be carried out. Line 1164 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I feel lost, like I should be doing something to help. Line 1161 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. There is a plan being orchestrated for the children. I was shown last night how it fit together, but it has been taken from my mind, of course.
Slide 54.
Line 1159 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What should I be doing? Line 1158 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are doing everything right, my love. The Lord told me she is right on track. He said to just keep resolving the telestial issues so you are unencumbered and fully free. Line 1155, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. That actually feels good that JJ was talking to the real Blake, getting close. When I was sitting across from him eating bacon, I sensed he was barely attached to his body.
And slide 55.
Line 1125, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are so incredible. In many ways, your mission has barely begun. Line 1124, from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. As long as it ends with you, it's all good. Line 1123, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, cheek to cheek, loin to loin. It isn't very far away, my love. Line 1120, from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I wish I could see with you and be cheek to cheek.
And so let's go back.
There's one more slide in the
Use
text
the
string.
next one. Okay.
Line 1118, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow.
There's been no question asked.
Moving on to read slide 56. Could you read that in the record,
I'd like a
please?
ruling on my objection.
Well, the objection was there's no question, and so council just asked a new question, so it's resolved.
Line 1118, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I seriously cannot stop crying. I was allowed to feel my own emotions I will experience as you sing to them, and the love, admiration, and reverence I have for you are indescribable. Everything we do together is going to be spectacular. Line 1117, from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I can't wait. Literally can't wait. I have no patience. I want you now. Line 1113, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm certainly your biggest fan. I love you, Lily. Hold on, my sweet angel. We're so close to the finish line. Line 1112, from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I'm trying. Line 1111, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. We'll make it.
And then there are some heart emojis at the end of that one and dancing people emojis.
Yes.
And so taking a step back at these text communications on August 10th, 2019, starting with slide 51. Who is it who initiates the conversation in text form about JJ Vallow?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. And what significance did this set of communications have in terms of your review and summary of the iClouds?
Yeah, I'm going to object. I think these texts speak for themselves.
I'll sustain that objection.
Thank you.
Agent, in preparing summary exhibits, how do you pick the particular slides or communications you include?
Based on their relevance in comparison with the entirety of the investigation and all of the information that has been developed during the course of that investigation.
And I'm going to object to his characterization of relevance. I think that's a legal conclusion.
Overruled.
Thank you. And so in picking these sets of text communication from the iCloud, what relevance did these have to the investigation itself?
They were inquiries by Lori Vallow regarding JJ's death percentage and Chad Daybell's response to those inquiries.
Okay. And so in the defendant and her co-conspirators' words, what was JJ's death percentage?
He was at 0.
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
And in terms of, now that, the text message reflected that JJ was at 0, what did the text text from Lori Vallow reflect her response was upon her hearing her son was at 0?
Again, Judge asked and answered.
That's been asked and answered.
Okay. Who initiated the inquiry about a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children?
Lori-Vallow.
Okay. Who initiated the question on whether they have to wait for it to be carried out?
Lori-Vallow.
Okay. Who initiated the conversation about what actions they could take to further the plan?
Again, Judge, I'm going to object. Texts speak for themselves.
Overruled.
Lori-Vallow.
Okay. Who initiated communications about further actions they could do to further plans on terrestrial issues?
Lori-Vallow.
Okay. And remind us again, what is terrestrial issues?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. And so terrestrial means earthly issues?
Objection asked and answered.
That's leading and sustained.
Okay. And so what in view and context of the entire iCloud that you reviewed, the defendant's own words and her statements to the co-conspirators, what did the defendant's words or the co-conspirators' words about unencumbered and fully free mean?
It is a reference to whatever issues are present in Lori-Vallow's life that are...
I'm going to object. He's speculating.
I'll sustain that.
Okay. Did you see conversation from the defendant in her own words with Chad Daybell or Alex Cox or others about having burdens in their life or barriers or obstacles?
Objection vague.
Overruled.
Yes.
Okay. And so in understanding that the defendant herself and her co-conspirators talked about having burdens and barriers or obstacles, in context of their own words, what did the phrase unencumbered and fully free mean?
To be free from those barriers or obstacles.
And looking at the text communications on slide 55, is this a reference to their future together?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you could take a look at slide 57. Can you tell us why you included the contents of slide 57 in your summary?
To illustrate the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori-Vallow.
Can you, and this text communication happened right at the end or around the time of the text communications about JJ being at 0?
Yes.
Okay. Can you read into the record slide 57, please?
Line 61, it's a photograph sent from Lori-Vallow to Chad Daybell with the caption, "Surprises are waiting."
And then there's an image on that screen as well?
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's turn to the text communication reflected on slide 58. Why did you include these communications in your summary?
I included these communications because it demonstrates an understanding on behalf of Lori-Vallow that of a reality of whether Chad Daybell is physically present with her or not physically present with her.
Okay. Could you read into the record the text communications on slide 58?
Line 965, from Lori-Vallow to Chad Daybell. Very good description of what just happened. Wish you were really here to experience this with me. Line 954, from Lori-Vallow to Chad Daybell. Thank you for being mine. Wish I could wake up and kiss your sweet, tender lips for real. You are my everything.
Okay. And so when you see the phrase "for real" or "really here," what significance did that have in terms of their overall communications and exchanges?
There were a lot of communications between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow in reference to portaling to different spheres of existence or different places so that they could be together spiritually. These two texts indicate an understanding of reality versus fantasy.
Turning to the text communications reflected in slide 59. Why did you include these text communications?
These text communications reference a family trip that Chad Daybell was taking with his wife and children and relatives, and that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were both upset by the fact that he had to spend time with his family.
Can you read these into the record, please?
Yes. Line 860 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will join you. Partly why I am so sad is my Boise trip has turned into a trip with extended family. Not happy about it. Line 859 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. How much more of this can you take? Line 858 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. They want to go to Craters of the Moon National Park. I can't take much more. So trapped. Line 857 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Are we supposed to wait forever?
And if you could read slide 60.
Line 856 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. No, but the next 2 days will be torture. Thankfully, I will be alone most of Wednesday and beyond. Line 854 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Is that what he wants? For me to sit around waiting for you endlessly and you miserably wasting time just doesn't feel right. Line 853 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I agree. It feels so drawn out. Line 850 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It's 3 broken heart emojis.
And let's proceed with slide 61. Those.
Line 844 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm just so frustrated. I'm sorry, honey. Line 843 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You can't just keep tearing my heart out. I really can't take it anymore. I'm sorry. Line 842 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It is tearing both of our hearts out. Please look beyond the next 2 days. Line 841 from Lori Vallow.
I apologize.
To Chad Daybell. What about the past 2 days? I didn't even get to talk to you on your birthday. I'm clearly not a priority. I just don't want to be so sad all the time and do heartbroken.
And 62.
Line 840 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. If you really loved me, you wouldn't want that either. Line 839 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I could have talked, but the girls were there. I truly love you with all my heart. Line 836 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You should give all of your love, you should give all of you love and your attention to your wife and family. I'm just a distraction. Go have fun with your family. I really do want you to. I just can't be in the way anymore. If things change, then we can talk. But we have nothing until things change anyway.
Do you want to pause here or finish the text exchange?
I believe there's just 1 or 2 more slides.
Could you read slide 63, please?
Line 833 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Oh, honey, that is so crushing. I feel so destroyed inside. You know my love for you is deep and real. I want change. I'm constantly begging for change. I want you. Nothing else matters. But I am hindering your life, and you deserve better. I love you so intensely. Line 832 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. But I will leave you alone, as excruciating as that will be until I hear from you. Line 831 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You can't say to me nothing else matters, because everything is before me. If that's what the Lord wants, then I just need to do something X so I can pull myself out of this deep despair. It's not like me to be this way. It's been way too much for way too long. Line 830 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. The pain is unbearable.
One more. And if you could read slide 64.
Line 829 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are right. Put me aside until things change. Yes, the pain is unbearable. Line 828 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Are you going to threaten me that I'm unprotected for doing so? Line 827 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Absolutely not. I'm so upset at the circumstances that I am demanding they protect you more than ever. Line 831 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You can't say to me nothing else matters because everything... I'm sorry, that's a repeat.
Okay.
That's an error. I apologize.
No, that's all right. And then...
I think there's one final slide.
Okay. The slide, if you could read slide 65.
Line 825 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I'm so alone without you. It is devastating. Line 824 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I feel so alone too. We are surrounded by telestial relatives that are simply obstacles. I'm so sick of it. Line 823 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Me too. What is it that you really want? Line 824 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I want to be with you. That is my greatest hope and dream. I would happily join you tomorrow if it felt like heaven would not strike us down.
That was a fairly lengthy set of text communications. Why did you include this conversation in the summary?
I included it to demonstrate the dynamic of the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow and the designation of their family, their relatives, as telestial obstacles.
Okay. And telestial obstacles to what?
To them being together.
Okay. And then you said the dynamic of that relationship. Can you help us understand what you meant by that?
Charles Vallow was
Yeah,
no...
on an objective foundation.
Sustained.
Okay. In your previous answer, you used the words that I did it to demonstrate the dynamic of their relationship. In your review of the hundreds of thousands of data points of this account, did you see exchanges between Lori Vallow and her co-conspirators?
Yes.
Okay. And in those communications and pictures and images, did an appearance of a relationship or dynamics of her relationship with Chad Daybell become apparent?
Yes.
Okay. So when you said you included this text exchange conversation as an example of the dynamic of their relationship, can you explain to us what you meant by that?
What I meant by that is that their relationship is the driving force behind the crimes that are alleged in this case.
Okay. And that the telestial relatives, the earthly relatives, are the obstacles.
Correct.
Now, let's turn to additional communication on September 3rd. Remind us again, what date was it that Tylee Ryan was last seen alive?
The last sighting of Tylee Ryan alive took place on September 8th of 2019.
Turning to communication from September 3rd of 2019, could you read slide 66 into the record, please?
Line 269 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Wi-Fi is in. What you doing? Line 267 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Working on Z's. What did you decide on username and password? Line 264. from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Network name is anti-layman. PW is too many kids.
And that's a number 2, not the word.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Line 263 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Funny.
Okay. Let's finish and review that next slide. Could you read slide 67 into the record, please?
Line 262 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. And I can change it to whatever you want if you want to change it. I am proud of you. No more Z's. Line 261 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. We are trying to get to the bottom of what we need to do to eliminate them completely. I'm sure you will be told also. Line 260 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Excellent.
If you don't mind pausing right here and looking at this conversation, could you explain to us why you included this part of the conversation between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow in your summary?
Yes, Alex Cox and Lori Vallow both moved to Rexburg, Idaho around September 1st and 2nd of 2019. I included this text mainly for line 264, which is the password Alex Cox designated for their network of too many kids.
Okay. And that's a text Alex Cox to Lori Vallow, correct?
Yes.
Did Alex Cox have any children living with him in Rexburg, Idaho?
No.
Of the 2 siblings, who had the children living in Rexburg, Idaho?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. I also see network name is anti-layman. In context of your review of all these records, did that, the records you reviewed and the investigation, and your knowledge of this investigation yield to understand what anti-layman was a reference to?
Yes.
What is that?
Layman is another individual referenced in the Book of Mormon. He is a brother of Nephi, so it's simply just a word chosen for their password.
Okay. And
network name, excuse me.
That's okay. And is layman known as a good guy or a bad guy?
A bad guy.
Okay. I also see the letter Z, and I understand that's been used throughout the iCloud. What is that a reference to?
Zombies.
And I also see line 261. There's a conversation where Lori is talking to Alex. What, if any, significance did line 261 have to you?
The significance of that is the partnership with Chad Daybell that Lori Vallow had in this alleged work in which they were engaged in eliminating zombies.
Okay. And yet it's a text communication to Alex Cox, so why would that be relevant if it wasn't with Chad?
There are a number of communications between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow that relate to the religious concepts that are discussed throughout the iCloud.
Okay. And the text, it says we are trying to get to the bottom of what we need to do to eliminate them completely. I'm sure you will be told also. And it was Alex who responded to Lori saying excellent?
Yes.
Okay. Moving to additional conversation on September 3rd, 2019. Can you read for us the contents of slide 68?
Line 259 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. I am going to get lunch and probably go to the range to sight in my rifles. Line 258 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Fun. You need the practice. Line 257 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. I do. Line 253 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Bad news on our brother. Line 252 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. What's that? Line 251, from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Z. Line 250, from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Really? When was that?
And let's, may I ask you to read slide 69, please?
Line 232, from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Forced out, I think. Line 231, from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. With his anxiety, he wasn't strong enough to fight back. Line 230, from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Line 229, from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. JJ is stronger, fights then off every day. Line 228, from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Zach was a 3L. JJ is a 4,3L.
And slide 70.
Line 227, from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. That's when he yells, no. Line 222, from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Okay. Line 221, from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. My lips are sealed. Line 220, from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Good boy, learning more. I'll fill you in this afternoon.
Why did you include these last several slides in your summary of your observations of the iCloud?
I included them to demonstrate that Alex Cox was a participant and in this group in discussing these religious concepts, including designating people as zombies, and that he understood those things in these communications.
And who is it who conveys this information to Alex Cox in this text exchange?
His sister, Lori Vallow.
Okay. Is that an indicative pattern you found in the iCloud that Lori Vallow would convey information to her brother Alex Cox?
Yes.
Did you see any additional evidence that Lori would sort of supply Alex affirmation like we see on line 220, good boy?
Yes.
Was that a pattern you saw in the iCloud?
It was. We saw those kinds of I saw those kinds of communications on a number of occasions.
Okay. And in any of those communications between Lori and Alex, did you ever see Lori suggesting to Alex that people weren't zombies?
Can you rephrase that?
Sure. In the text communications between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, did you ever see communications where the concept of certain dark entities or zombies came up, where Lori was sort of pulling Alex back or telling him, no, they're not zombies?
No.
Okay. Now let's turn to slide 71. What are we seeing here?
This is from the videos section of Lori for Style. There was a number of very short videos that existed. This is just one of those that documents a trip that Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, Tylee Ryan, and JJ Vallow took to Yellowstone National Park on September 8th of 2019. And this is the last known video of Tylee Ryan alive.
Why did you include this? Because it was the last one, Tylee, where Tylee was alive?
Yes.
And the image on the screen is her, JJ, and Alex Cox.
Correct.
Your Honor, I can certainly, at what point does the court want to take a lunch break?
Just any time between now and noon is fine.
This might be a good place to stop, Judge.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
All right, we'll take our lunch recess. Let's go ahead and have the jurors excused for lunch, then I'll address counsel briefly after they're excused.
All right, please.